Hello.
No, when you hear that, like you speak your truth. So is there truth or not? When you're starting saying like it's your truth, you're starting to say like your opinion is equal to the truth, which means that if you think that 2 + 2 = 5, then that's your truth. And by the way, there are people who if you guys were following year before last, there was this big internet debate about whether or not 2 + 2 = 5. And I said, I shake my head and I go, man, sometimes you can have too much food in a country, you know? You can have too much water to drink, you can have, things can just be too damn good, such that we actually want to sit there and debate that. Not because that means that we have nothing else to do, but because we have so little to argue and fight about that we have to make stuff up now. No, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5, and if your truth tells you that gravity doesn't exist, I challenge you to go up to the main building and jump off of it. You're going to find out that there's no such thing as your truth or my truth. There's the truth. There can be a perception of the truth, but language matters. As soon as you start saying, well, yeah, but that's what I mean, my perception, then say my perception of the truth. Otherwise, what you're suggesting is that when you say my truth, which is essentially just my perception, that's equal to reality itself, which means that there are multiple versions of reality, which means that there's no such thing as reality, which means there's no such thing as objective truth, which means there's no such thing as right or wrong, which means nothing means anything. This is nihilism. And we push this, and then we wonder why there's such an incredible mental health crisis. And we might say, like, oh, but we have a mental health crisis because of all the things that are going on in the world, in the country. First off, why do you think those things are going on? You don't think there's a connection between those two things? And besides which, again, news for you, those things have been going on throughout all of history. And yet we still have worse mental health today than ever before as we objectively measure it. And you ask, why? Well, I wonder, because we're telling the world there's no such thing as objective truth, there's no such thing as reality. Therefore, if that's true, then nothing matters. It's like, I don't know if any of you guys are fans of the Marvel stuff,
yeah.
But it's complete trash, man. And I mean, it's become that. Not that it was that. But as soon as you, like for example, I don't know if anybody watched Loki, TV show. When you're watching the Marvel movies, what's the most powerful thing in the universe?
Stone.
What's the thing that destroys the universe?
Stone.
Yeah, these stones. The Infinity Stones. You have a whole series of movies geared towards we have to control these stones because if they fall into the wrong hands, half of the universe is going to be wiped out. And then this one guy says, you know what, I didn't go far enough. Next time I get a hold of them, I'm going to wipe out the whole universe. And there's this whole movie series bent towards we have to make sure that these things are not in the wrong hands. And then you watch the Loki TV show, and you might remember, some guy opens up a drawer in an office, and the drawer is full of Infinity Stones. And then he's like, oh yeah, they're not that big of a deal. Yeah, they're just paperweights. So are they not then? So then what that therefore means that the whole movie series was trash. It was garbage.
It was bullshit.
Yeah, it didn't matter. In the whole like emotional investment that an audience would put into it, into these characters, into the story arc, into the heroism, the kind of lessons and morals that we could get from it, not there anymore. Don't matter anymore. Because you have an office building, because Disney needed to make some kind of a point. You know, and you pull all of the important things out of a narrative, out of a fairy tale, out of a story. And of course, that's where some of you have said, that's where we derive a lot of our lessons from. Not just moral lessons about right or wrong, but also lessons about how to be a hero, how not to be a villain, how to do this, how to be that thing. And especially today, if I were to go back, say, 30 years, and I imagine if I asked some students who are some of your role models today, they would be able to name some people. And if I asked you today, who are your role models, I mean, who would you name? You've got, I don't know, athletes. You got LeBron James, he's real.
Oh no,
LeBron James exists in real life. It's not just a Space Jam movie.
Oh.
LeBron James, who's basically a whore, who will criticize a lot about the country here, and yet he has his stuff made by Nike in the Uyghur slave camps. This guy literally has his stuff being made by literal slaves. Not like, oh, I literally can't know. An actual literal slave is making their stuff, and he stands there with his thumbs up and says, China's the way to go. I thought you were against human oppression. You're not really against human oppression. You're just against it in certain contexts, which means you don't really care about humanity, you care about bottom lines. So what's the difference between him and these evil corporations that we're so pissed off at? Nothing. Because, why? LeBron James is a human being. And who runs corporations? Human beings. And that's who we look to for our role models. Well, you know, if you can make money off of it, then objective truth doesn't matter, morality doesn't matter, none of these things matter. And then we wonder why we don't care about each other. And then we wonder why we get these surveys that indicate that your generation is more likely to save your dog from a burning building than you are to save a human being from a burning building. And you wonder why. Oh, well, man, humanity sucks. Well, I don't know why we think that. There's no such thing as truth, because right and wrong don't matter. You know, there's only your truth and my truth, and everything else is just kind of up in the air. And we've pulled all of the challenge. Oh, and by the way, we won't even let you take chances in life. We've nerfed all your playgrounds. We want to make sure that nothing bad happens to you, which means you have no opportunity towards the heroic. You have no opportunity to overcome anything, because we're trying to go out before you and remove all of the obstacles from your life. I mean, my God, you guys have to, I'll tell you part of this. As you guys know, over the past few years, the seniors have only needed how many credits to graduate? 26. That's 40% less credits than you guys need, and it's 40% less credits than what was needed before them. Why? Seriously, I'm asking this question, why? Why would they need 40% fewer credits to graduate? Yeah.
So that people would graduate.
Yeah, that's what it really is. It isn't because, you know, it was essentially going to them going, oh, you guys are weak, so we need to go out ahead of you and stop you from failing. And that whole thing first started in the fourth quarter of the pandemic year when we were in lockdowns. And the justification at that time was, well, you know, seniors, it's to the end. They don't have the opportunity to make up credits because they can't access credit recovery. Dude, if you're down 40% of your credits in the fourth quarter, you're not graduating anyway. And yet, we still came along and said, well, we're going to drop the number of credits, and all of the work that you guys do is extra credit. We can't drop your grade. We can only raise your grade from there. And yet, still, F and D rates were through the roof. So then the following year comes through, same idea. It was, well, you know, they went through the pandemic last year. Did you lose 40% of your credits? Even if you failed all of your classes because of it, that's only 25% of your credits. So then why do we drop 40%? Well, you know, your mental health, you guys are weak, so we have to go out ahead of you. And it's this idea that you guys are weak that suddenly then I talk with students who, I mean, come on, you guys understand this. You're playing a system. I'm not saying everybody, but some of you understand this. You play the system. There was a student I was talking to recently who missed a class, and they said, oh, shoot, you know, time got away from where we were talking, and they said, oh, well, I'll just tell the teacher about, you know, mental health. The teacher will excuse it. Like, of course, yeah, because if you get certain teachers, you say just those magic words to them, they feel like, oh, that must mean you're weak. I'm not supposed to say certain words to you. I'm not supposed to bring up certain topics to you. Because, why? Because you're weak. I don't think you're weak. I don't think you're weak, but somehow I'm the asshole because I don't think that you're weak. I'm the asshole even though I think you can do 44 credits just like everybody else before you. That's because you don't understand. Maybe. Maybe. Or maybe allowing you to graduate with 26 credits is actually making you weaker, which means that when you go out into the world, we're able to sit there and go, oh, they graduated. How wonderful of us. Our graduation rates are still really high. And then you go out into the world and you're struggling because it turns out that your boss isn't going to let you get 100% of your pay for 40% less work. And not that you need that anyway. I don't even think that you're learning that lesson. I don't think anybody actually learned that lesson. I think it's just that it's about us. It isn't about you guys at all. Our school has to have higher graduation rates, otherwise our administrators look bad. Otherwise the principal looks bad. And that's what it really is about, more than anything. And so the point is that when we now come along and say, by the way, this is the hard thing that we're in right now. If it's true that you needed 44 credits to graduate, but if it's true that 26 was good enough for the past few years, then I'm asking the question, in other words, if you got just as good of an education, which is what we're saying, you got just as good of an education the past couple of years as you got before. Well, then why would we go back to this? If we can give you just as good of an education with this, then why would we require you to do this? I mean, it seems like with this especially, we could save a ton of money, man. You could go to school, high school could be 2.5 years. You could lay off a whole bunch of teachers. because we don't need to pay teachers as much as we are. We don't need as many teachers. If you've got 40% fewer credits, don't you need 40% fewer teachers? And now you start to wonder, oh, that's why we go back to this. But then you can't hold both of those at the same time. You can't say, you got just as good of an education with this, but this is what's necessary. They're contradictory positions. And the only way that you can believe both of those things is if we can convince you to say, there's no such thing as truth. There's only your truth and my truth, and there's no such thing as objective reality. And so that's why we can hold these completely contradictory positions, illogical positions. This is just as good as this, but we should go back to this, even though this costs us 40% more money. Then you start to think, oh, maybe, just maybe it's not about the students. Maybe it is about the teachers. But that's okay, because that's just your truth. And this is just my truth, and this that's truth over there. One of the things that fairy tales teach us is that there are things that are unreal, but they're not untrue. And that's because truth resides in something much deeper than just a story that's being taught. The reason I asked about this realism versus idealism thing is because we say this kind of thing all the time, like, well, there's the real world, and then there's the ideal world. Why are they so different? Well, because this is more accurate and truthful. But don't you realize that this depends on your perception of the world? If you're someone who says, oh, idealism is like, oh, the whole world is sunshine and rainbows, which, by the way, is not what it means. And then you say, but realism is how the world really is. Well, how is the world really? And you understand that whatever it is that you're saying here is going to be made up of your perceptions, because none of us sees the world the way that it really is. We see the world the way that we are, what we project out onto it. If you expect that people in the world are going to be angry and hateful and vengeful and spiteful, you're going to encounter people all day long who are angry and vengeful and hateful and spiteful. You're going to find it. Or even if it's not there, you're going to see it there. You're going to see it in places that it's not. And then you're going to find those things that confirm it. And then you're going to say, ah, see, I knew it. That's the way that it really is. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So basically, like the idea from it is seeing from what the truth is usually depending of what you is like you summarize that like what you experience and then what's proven.
Yeah, but what you experience a lot of times is what you expect.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that again. What you experience a lot of times is what you expect. Lots of times, maybe I'll show you guys what I'm talking about with regards to sex. It really is an important point. But the things that you experience are oftentimes the things that you expect. So one of the ways that you can reorient yourself in the world is to change your expectations, particularly of yourself. You go into a class and you think, oh, this is really hard, I can't do this. You're probably right. You're probably right. You walk into a class and you say, this is very difficult. But I think if I work hard, I can get through this. You're probably right. You walk in that same class and you say, this is really easy. I got this. You're probably right. And I'm not just saying that you're trying to hype yourself up, like, this is easy, I can do this. No, I'm saying if your attitude really will shape it. Because in that sense there, if you believe you can't do it, all of your defense mechanisms go up, all of your stress indicators go up, and that makes it very difficult to learn, and so therefore you won't. On the other side of the coin, if you walk in optimistically, believing it can be done, then all of those things are down, and your mind is far more open, your brain is far more, I'll say it simply, your brain is far more capable of bringing in information. You're more likely to be able to do this, because your experience is going to shape it. Now that doesn't mean that, so now you might say, well then doesn't that mean that you're just kind of making the world in that image? No. If you experience good in the world, does that mean there's no longer evil? No, of course not. If you expect to find evil everywhere and you find it, does that mean there's no good? No, that just means you're ignoring it. It's going to be both of these kinds of things. These two things I would suggest to you are far more closely related than we give them credit for. Idealism means idea. It's what's in your head. That's where it comes from. And so the thing is, like when we say, oh, someone's an idealist, because that they're working off of an idea, an ideal of an idea, and we want it to be a positive thing. But then, as soon as you put these verses in there, that suggests that this means negativity. If this is overly optimistic, if this means that this is overly optimistic, that means that this is all negative, which means that builds into it the idea that the whole world is negative, and then you experience it that way. And then surprise, surprise, you walk out into the world like that and you experience it that way, and then that's what you find. You ever woke up in the morning and been in a bad mood and all of a sudden you found that everybody that day is testing you? Every interaction you come across now is negative and all that? Well, it's not that that's the case, it's that you're bringing that out of people. And you walk there angry and you walk into a Starbucks and you bump shoulders with somebody because you're not moving, screw them. And then it's like, God, people are just testing me today. Maybe it's what you're giving off. Maybe if you were able to stop giving that off and take a breath and go, let me just pretend like I'm in a good mood and see what happens. Maybe something positive. There's something that's really important about this, that we intuitively understand that these things, that these moral stories that we're learning from, they're unreal, sure. There's no such thing as a dragon, maybe. But there's something that's true about it, and it happens up here at this level. And the symbolic is connected to the ideal. The symbolism is something that I don't have to teach you. If I come in here and I told you guys that a friend of mine, I go, this guy's just a mountain. A friend of mine, this guy's a mountain. I don't have to tell you what the guy's like. You can figure some things out about him because I'm using a symbol. And no one's ever taught you, here's what a mountain symbolizes. You just know. If I have an old friend of mine, his name is Keith, and Keith's nickname was the Lake. The Lake. What do I mean by that? What's he like?
He's pretty chill.
He's chill. Yeah, he's like a lake. He's calm, man. You can't upset this guy. Nothing upsets this guy. If you went to this guy and gave him the worst news in the world, he'd find something hyper positive about it. He's that kind of a guy. Hey Keith, your whole family was just killed in a car accident. Well, the good news is I'm going to save money on Christmas this year. It's not that he doesn't care about negative stuff. It's that he's able to find the positive in anything. You can't upset the guy. You try as much as you want. I used to work with him, so we used to do that all the time. We try and mess with him as much as we could just to get under his skin, just to see if we could finally push Keith over the edge. No, never were successful. You just could not shake this guy for anything. And Caleb was actually a pretty big dude, man. Nothing was going to shake this guy. So if I tell you that someone's a lake, then they're a mountain. Now, if you start to employ that, what do you think of when you think of a forest besides trees?
Lost.
So I tell you in a story that someone is now wandering through a forest, you understand that symbolically somehow they're wandering through a place that they're lost. It's mysterious. And this is the level at which fairy tales operate. They operate at the symbolic, because that way kids understand it. And this is how when we grow up, we can now look back, and if you understand these stories, not just in terms of the characters, but in terms of the symbols, now things start to make a heck of a lot more sense. And this is why once we get older, we can start to read these things to our kids, and this is why they last for hundreds and hundreds of years. And we don't like watching movies that are more than 30 years old, but we read stories that are 500 years old, 1,000 years old. Because as much as we like to think the world has changed, it has, but the human condition hasn't changed. We're still the same things that we've been for hundreds of thousands of years. We're just living in cities now, and we have phones in our pockets. But the things about us don't change. And that's what the symbolic speaks to, those unchanging aspects of ourselves. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?
Yeah.